Welcome to Illuminati Silver. We tell you the truth about silver. Today is Wednesday, the 18th of November 2020, and we're looking at the truth behind the much-acclaimed solar panels and renewable energies proving to be the savior of silver, and its explosive tailwind boosting its price well into the 2020s and beyond. Is this fact or fiction? Let's take a look. Now, yesterday we published a video entitled "Why Reported Silver Supply and Demand Does Not Equal Price," where we highlighted that we should not necessarily take the Silver Institute's reports as being 100% accurate or as an indicator of future prices, even though it may be one of the best sources for silver supply and demand information publicly available. We've also this week looked at how much will silver be worth if the dollar collapses, and on Sunday we produced episode 1 of Are We Reaching Peak Silver? And we provide links to all of these in the description box below, as well as the links to our 5 episodes of the Peak Gold series. Now, going back to the purpose of today's video, solar panels. Now, many advocates for silver keep telling us to expect silver prices to rise because of solar panels, and silver's demand will go through the roof as a result, and because of a move towards renewable energy. Well, we shall take a brief look at an article actually pointing out that fact, that energy consumption moving forward will undoubtedly be focused on renewables and the importance of solar power within that space. So let's take a look. CNN Business article, dated October 13th, 2020. Headline: Solar power could be the new king as global electricity demand grows. Renewable energy led by solar power could make up 80% of the growth in electricity generation over the next decade, according to a report published Tuesday. The International Energy Agency said it is now consistently cheaper to generate electricity by capturing the sun's energy than by burning coal or natural gas in most countries. Solar photovoltaic cells are now one of the cheapest sources of electricity in history, thanks to maturing technologies and policies that have reduced the cost of investments, the Paris-based agency said. Photovoltaic systems can be installed as panels on homes or businesses, as well as deployed at solar parks. The agency's report lays out 3 scenarios for the future development of global energy markets, which have been roiled by the coronavirus pandemic. While fossil fuels face a precarious future, the prospects for renewable sources of power generation range from strong to spectacular, with solar leading the charge. According to the International Renewable Energy Agency, an intergovernmental body, electricity costs from large-scale solar photovoltaic installations have fallen from roughly 30 cents per kilowatt hour in 2010 to a global average of 6.8 cents per kilowatt hour last year. I see solar becoming the new king of the world's electricity markets, IEA Executive Director Fatih Birol said in a statement. Based on today's policy settings, it's on track to set new records for deployment every year after 2022, he added. In one scenario explored by the IEA, under which the pandemic is brought under control and global energy demand returns to its pre-crisis level by early 2023, the number of photovoltaic systems grows strongly, boosting solar capacity by an average of 12% a year to 2030. Renewables meet about 80% of the growth in global electricity generation over the same period, overtaking coal by 2025 as the primary means of producing electricity. Electricity is expected to account for an increasing share of overall energy consumption, given that providing clean power to sectors such as transport is critical to a low-carbon future. According to the IEA, solar power remains a cost-effective choice even in a scenario in which the pandemic drags on, causing lasting damage to the economy and ushering in a decade with the lowest rate of energy demand growth since the 1930s. Solar performs even more strongly in the IEA's sustainable development scenario, in which a surge in clean energy policies and investment puts the world on track to reach the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. The combined share of solar, photovoltaic and wind in global generation rises from 8% in 2019 to almost 30% in 2030. If governments and investors step up their clean energy efforts, the growth of both solar and wind would be even more spectacular and hugely encouraging for overcoming the world's climate challenge, said Bullion. Some governments are including environmental commitments in their coronavirus recovery plans as they face growing calls to use the pandemic as an opportunity to tackle the climate crisis by accelerating the shift away from fossil fuels. Oil companies such as BP and Royal Dutch Shell have unveiled major strategic shifts towards low-carbon energy in another sign that the pandemic is bringing profound changes to global energy markets. Whether this upheaval ultimately helps or hinders efforts to accelerate clean energy transitions and reach international energy and climate goals will depend on how governments respond to today's challenges, the report said. Coal demise. Solar meteoric rise contrasts with the decline of coal, which has been a mainstay of global energy systems for decades. Reduced economic activity and electricity demand as a result of the pandemic have catalyzed a structural fall in global coal demand, according to the IEA report, which expects 275 gigawatts of coal-fired capacity to be retired by 2025. That's about 13% of total coal capacity in 2019. Even if the global economy recovers from the pandemic next year, coal's share in global generation falls from 37% to 28% in 2030. The rise of renewables, combined with cheap natural gas and coal phase-out policies, means that coal demand in advanced economies drops by almost a half to 2030, the report said. Growth in coal use in developing economies in Asia, such as India, is much lower than previously expected and is not enough to offset declines elsewhere. For example, Chinese President Xi Jinping's pledge to make the country carbon neutral within 40 years will require the world's largest coal consumer to dramatically reduce its reliance on the fossil fuel. The declining costs of solar will only spur coal's demise. The International Renewable Energy Agency said in June that solar prices could average 3.9% per kilowatt hour for projects commissioned next year, down 42% compared to 2019 and more than a fifth cheaper than coal-fired plants. The outlook for oil, however, is less certain. Demand for crude cratered at the height of lockdowns, with factories shut, planes grounded and motorists at home. While there has been a modest recovery, some analysts and BP think that oil demand may never return to its 2019 high as the pandemic brings lasting changes to the way people live and travel, while prompting governments to take more aggressive steps to curb carbon emissions. The IEA expects oil demand growth to end in the next decade, but said that without a major shift in government policies, there's no sign of rapid decline. Based on today's policy settings, a global economic rebound would soon push oil demand back to pre-crisis levels, said Bullion. The report forecasts a 5% drop in energy demand this year, with energy-related carbon emissions expected to fall 7% and energy investment tumbling 18%. End of article. All well and good, we think. But is this the full and complete picture? Well, not according to an article written by S&P Global recently, which suggests a somewhat differing conclusion. So let's take a look at that article and we'll comment upon it once we've read it to you. S&P Global Market Intelligence article, dated 30th of September 2020. Headline: Solar-driven demand set to dim as sector innovates. And then a picture of a solar rooftop array at the Soleil Lofts apartment complex in Herriman, Utah. Silver demand from the solar sector looks set to wane as manufacturers continue to find ways to use less of the highly conductive but relatively expensive metal in their solar cells, according to experts. Out to 2024, we see volume drifting lower, said Philip Newman, a founding partner of research group Metals Focus, which produced a silver supply demand report for the Silver Institute in April. Likewise, consultancy CRU Group said it expects silver demand from the solar sector to start falling in 2020 after years of relatively uninterrupted growth. We forecast a slow decline in silver demand from 2020 to 2023 as photovoltaic or PV capacity added per year dips, while attempts at silver thrifting in PV panels continues at a diminished rate, CRU Group analyst Alex Larn wrote in a June report. Booming solar panel installations on rooftops and at utility-scale power projects over the past couple of decades have been a bright spot for silver. The precious metal is highly conductive and amenable to cost-effective screen printing processes, making it a key component of solar cells. Silver is typically laid down on the solar cell in what are called fingers, helping to deliver harvested energy. Amid growing installations of solar power, silver has benefited massively. In the early 2000s, silver demand from the solar sector barely registered, making up less than 1% of silver demand. In 2019, the photovoltaic sector accounted for 10% of total silver demand, comprising 98.7 million ounces, within total demand of 991.8 million ounces, according to Metals Focus data. The use of silver in photovoltaics is not likely to stop, but analysts expect industry innovation to continue to lower silver content per cell, outstripping demand from new solar installations. CRU Group estimated that each solar cell used an average 111 milligrams of silver per cell in 2019, decreasing from 521 milligrams per cell in 2009. Innovation in screen printing processes, in which silver-containing pastes are applied to solar cells in strips, is one of the key areas where manufacturers have squeezed out silver, and the trend has yet to reach a limit, according to industry experts. Florian Clement, Group Head of Solar Cell Printing Technology at Fraunhofer Institute for Solar Energy Systems ISE, a major German research group, expects the industry to be able to halve its use of silver per cell over the coming decade. A reduction down to 50 milligrams per cell is still expected to be possible within the next 10 years, Clement said. That reduction and changes to the pace of global solar installations are key drivers in the anticipated drop in silver demand from photovoltaics, analysts with CRU Group and Metals Focus said. However, if a dimmer outlook for silver is on the horizon, demand from the solar industry is expected to stabilize in the coming decades as thrifting wanes. Looking to the longer term, CRU expects silver demand to fluctuate between 70 to 80 million ounces per year between 2024 and 2030, as the rate of silver thrifting slows further and PV capacity additions slightly increase, CRU Group wrote in its June report. Newman similarly said that while the silver boom from the solar sector may have peaked for now, the industry will remain a key player. It's still an incredibly high volume for one application, Newman said. Meanwhile, Clement noted that silver will be extremely difficult to replace, at least in the types of solar cells that have come to dominate the market. Copper is cheaper and more abundant, and might seem like an obvious choice to swap out for silver, but there are technical hurdles to using it cost effectively in the cell manufacturing process. Silver is easy to use in screen printing, Clement said, while copper typically requires more costly processes to apply, including different atmospheric conditions and curing methods, among other factors that drive up costs. If you look at mass production at the moment, silver is for sure the material you have to use, Clement said. The trend now in cell manufacturing is to make them with more closely spaced, smaller fingers, using less silver that in turn connect to more closely spaced wires on the cell or bus bars, Clement said. A bus bar is a metal strip or bar used to distribute local high current electricity. At the moment, we have maybe 9 or 12 wires for the best modules on the market, Clement said. In the next 3 to 5 years, we may reach 15 to 20 wires, and the process is ongoing. So, what are we to glean from these potentially conflicting pieces of information? Now, something we've stated ever since this channel began is that it would be wrong and misleading to base the future of silver demand upon just 1 or 2 prime sources, and to rest assured when relying on commercial applications, it is the mission, if not duty, of every business to drive down costs as much as possible in order to increase profitability. And solar panels are not exempt from this. As silver becomes more expensive, which it has, businesses will look at ways of reducing the amount required to be used, and substitutes are often then found. Or new technologies enable the use of less silver being required. Now, this does not mean that silver's future is not rosy, but what it does mean is that one should not rely on the hype or hyperbole and exaggerating claims made by those who have a vested interest in persuading you to buy now and as much as you possibly can. We nevertheless are still confident about silver's future moving forward, but we suspect that any significant price gains, certainly in the short to medium term, are more likely to be the result of financial speculation than hardcore physical demand, particularly from the industrial sector. Please do comment below whether you agree or disagree. It'll be interesting to hear your thoughts. And meanwhile, before we finish, we're publishing this at 1550 GMT, and we can see gold is down just over $7 today at $1,881, and silver is up around 6 cents at $24.61. But the main mover today has been Bitcoin, up another $900 in the last 24 hours at $17,687. There seems to be no stopping it. Thank you so much for listening. Please share your thoughts below, and if you haven't already done so, kindly subscribe to our channel. Not forgetting to press the bell sign so you're notified of our videos as and when they're published. And we've also today published a video on the Richard and Greg channel, links below, where Greg and I discuss the coronavirus vaccines and whether they're likely to be effective, and if so, for how long, and whether Greg intends to use one himself. So until next time, we hope you have found this video interesting and informative, and if so, please give it a thumbs up and share it on social media. Please ensure that you have subscribed to our channel and press the bell sign so that you are notified of any future videos. Also, kindly visit our website at illuminatisilver.com, and if you haven't already done so, please subscribe either as a free or paying member for regular email updates and offers. Disclaimer: Illuminati Silver owners come from a background of banking, international wealth management and economics. Having now retired from these worlds, we are not qualified to give investment advice. Therefore, this and other productions must not be deemed to be giving such advice and merely represent the personal views of its owners.